Can a child really see heaven and come back to tell the tale? In recent days, a whisper from a young boy, has taken the internet by storm. And what he said could forever change the way you view faith and death. This isn't just another pretty story. We're talking about a phenomenon being debated by theologians, psychologists, and ordinary people like you and me. The question remains, are we facing a real miracle, documented in our time, or the fertile imagination of a child? In this video, we'll delve deep into the story behind the viral audio. We'll analyze the stunning details the boy described, details that, some say, he couldn't have known. We'll hear what experts have to say about experiences like this. And most importantly, we'll explore the description he gave of Jesus himself, a description so specific and so unexpected that it has sent chills down the spines of everyone who listens. Stay with me until the end, because the last thing he revealed, the message he brought back, is the most enigmatic and powerful part of this entire story. It all began on a Tuesday morning, in an ordinary house, on an ordinary street. The family of Lucas, a boy just 5 years old, lived a quiet routine. The night before, he had a very high fever. The kind that leaves any parent on high alert, with wet towels on his forehead and a vigil at his bedside. The fever subsided during the night, and in the morning, Lucas woke up symptom-free, completely normal. Playful, asking for his usual cereal. His mother, Amanda, felt that deep relief only those who have cared for a sick child know. But there was something different in his gaze. A serenity, a depth that hadn't been there before. It was during breakfast that he looked at her, his eyes wide open, and said the sentence that would start it all, "Mom, did I die yesterday?" Amanda froze. Her heart seemed to stop for a second. She tried to smile, to hide her panic. "No, my love, of course not. You just had a very high fever, but it's gone. You're here with Mommy." Lucas shook his head, as if her answer didn't make sense. "No, Mom. I did die. And I went to heaven. Heavenly Father took me for a walk." It was at that moment that Amanda, perhaps out of an instinct she couldn't explain, grabbed her phone and started recording, just the audio. She needed to capture it, perhaps to show her husband later, perhaps because she felt she was witnessing something beyond her comprehension. And it's this audio, raw, unedited, with the sounds of the kitchen in the background, that has traveled through thousands of cell phones. Her voice, trembling, asks, and what was heaven like, my son? What did you see?" From here, Lucas's story begins to unfold in a way that defies logic. A 5-year-old, who barely knows how to tie his shoes, begins to describe a place with a wealth of detail that is, to say the least, disconcerting. The first thing he describes aren't angels or clouds. They're the colors. He struggles to explain, gesturing with his little hands. "The colors there, Mom, they sing. The yellow isn't just yellow like the sun, it has a warm sound, like when you hug me. And the blue isn't the blue of the sky here, which we just look at. The blue there embraces us, it's soft. And there are colors that have no name, that I've never seen here." He speaks of a song, but not a song coming from a radio. Everyone sings along, but without opening their mouths. The music comes from their chests. And the trees, the leaves on the trees clap, but without making a sound. His mother, Amanda, asks about the people. If he saw anyone he knew. And this is where the story takes on an even more inexplicable layer. Lucas says he saw Grandpa Ricardo. Ricardo was Amanda's father, who died 10 years ago in a car accident. Lucas never met him. He was born 5 years after his grandfather's death. Amanda, skeptical but curious, decides to test it. She asks, "And what was Grandpa Ricardo like?" Lucas answers without hesitation, "He has funny hair that flies up and a little part on his chin. And he wears a soccer jersey, Mom, full of stripes." Amanda felt her breath catch. The description was perfect. The unruly hair, the scar on his chin from a childhood accident, and the soccer jersey he always wore, a striped shirt buried in the back of a closet. Lucas had never seen a photo of his grandfather wearing that jersey. How could he know? But the story continues. He describes a river, but the water isn't wet. It's like diving into the light, Mom. You go in and you shine inside. He talks about animals, some we know, like lions and sheep, but who play together. The lion let me stroke his beard, and he purred like our kitten. Every detail is told with a childlike simplicity that makes it even more powerful. There's no hesitation, no invention. It's as if he were simply describing a memory of a walk he took the day before. The central part of the story, and the most moving, is when the mother finally summons the courage to ask about the central figure of the Christian faith. Son, have you seen Jesus? Lucas breaks into a smile so wide it lights up his face. Yes, Mom. He showed me everything. Amanda takes a deep breath. And what was he like? Lucas's answer is what has touched the hearts of thousands. He doesn't describe the standard figure we see in paintings and movies. He doesn't mention the color of his hair or eyes. His perception is purely sensory, emotional. He is very, very bright, Mom. But his light doesn't hurt the eyes. It's a light that warms. And his face, we can't draw it. It's like looking into a warm fireplace on a cold day. We feel safe. And his smile. Mom, his smile makes the sound of a waterfall and smells like Grandma's cake. It's the most delicious smell in the world. He continues, and his eyes. His eyes knew all my secrets. He knew that day I broke your vase and didn't tell. He knew I was afraid of the dark. But his eyes didn't get angry, Mom. They just smiled, and when he looked at me, all my fear went away. This description, so pure and so different, escapes any cliché. How could a 5-year-old child articulate such complex feelings? How could he translate a spiritual experience into such poetic and precise metaphors? It is at this point that we need to pause and look at the other side of the coin. Science and psychology offer alternative explanations for phenomena like this. And it is important to consider them to get a complete picture. Child psychologists explain that a child's brain is a complex and fascinating universe. The boundary between reality and imagination is extremely fluid. A high fever, like the one Lucas had, is known to cause feverish hallucinations, which are extremely vivid and realistic dreams. A child's mind, especially during a moment of physical discomfort, can create safe havens, paradises constructed from fragments of information absorbed from the environment. Stories told in church, images from biblical cartoons, conversations overheard by parents. The child's brain can weave all these elements into a coherent and comforting narrative. The concept of implanted memory or false memory is also relevant. Sometimes a child may hear a story about a deceased relative, glimpse a photo, and their mind may assimilate this information and later reproduce it as a personal memory, a lived experience. The description of their grandfather's striped shirt, for example, could be the result of a photo seen months earlier, the memory of which has been stored in the subconscious. Within the field of theology itself, there is debate. While many believers embrace these stories as proof of the existence of heaven and modern miracles, other theologians urge caution. The Bible warns of the need to test the spirits and exercise discernment. Not every spiritual experience is necessarily divine. There is the concept of an animistic phenomenon, which are experiences that originate from the human soul itself, the psyche, rather than from an external source. In moments of great stress, such as a serious illness, the human soul can project images and experiences of great emotional power. So the question remains, are we witnessing a miracle or a complex psychological phenomenon? A window to the beyond or a window into the incredible capacity of the child's mind to create and comfort? Perhaps the answer is not so simple. Perhaps it is not a question of either/or. But Luke's story does not end with the description of heaven or Jesus. There is one last part. The part that Amanda, the mother, describes as the most disturbing and, at the same time, the most beautiful. It is the message he claims to have received. After describing Jesus' smile, Amanda, her voice choked with tears, asks, "And he? Did he say something to you, my son? Did he give you a message?" Luke is silent for a few seconds, as if remembering something very important. He looks into his mother's eyes and says, with a seriousness unbecoming of his age, he said, "To warn everyone that they don't need to be afraid of the dark." Amanda frowns, not understanding. "The dark, son?" And Lucas adds, "Yes, Mom. The dark when we die." He said that the darkness people are afraid of is just the blink of an eye before his light arrives. That it's just the beginning of clarity. A shiver ran through Amanda's body. The fear of death, the fear of the unknown, summed up and undone by the simplest and most beautiful explanation she'd ever heard. But there was more. Lucas continued, and he said one more thing. He asked me to tell everyone to stop fighting for him here on earth. He said that when people yell at each other, using his name, all of heaven gets quiet and sad. He said he doesn't need anyone to fight for him. Just that we care for each other, as he cared for us there. This last part is what has made this story resonate so universally. It transcends religious denominations, dogmas, and doctrines. It's a message of peace, hope, and unity. A message that, coming from the mouth of a 5-year-old, carries extraordinary weight. Lucas's family was initially hesitant to share the full story. They feared judgment, sensationalism, that their son would be seen as a freak. But at the same time, they felt they had no right to keep a message like that to themselves. So what do we do with a story like this? What does it mean for us, who live in a world so cynical and so lacking in hope? Perhaps the fundamental question isn't whether or not Luke was in heaven. Perhaps we'll never have that proof. Perhaps the true value of his account lies not in its empirical proof, but in its ability to make us pause, amidst the chaos of our lives, and look up. To make us question our certainties and reconnect with the mystery. Whether a divine miracle, an extraordinarily vivid fever dream, or the fruit of a boy's pure imagination, one thing is undeniable: Luke's story confronts us with life's big questions. What happens after we die? What is the meaning of our faith? And how can we live in a more loving and united way? The message he brought back is one of simplicity and love that the world desperately needs to hear. That humanity's greatest fear may be but a brief prelude to light. And that the purpose of faith is not to create walls and divisions, but to build bridges and care for one another. Ultimately, it may not matter whether you believe Luke saw Jesus with his physical eyes or with the eyes of his soul. What matters is the beauty of the message and the impact it can have on our lives. Maybe, just maybe, we need, every now and then, the purity of a child to remind us of the most essential truths. That faith doesn't have to be complicated. That love is the answer. And that there is no darkness that light cannot conquer. Luke's story leaves us with this invitation to look at the world with a little more wonder, a little less cynicism, and with the courage to believe that, even in the most inexplicable situations, there can be a message of hope waiting to be heard.